the first time I actually understood that we were going to get hit hard. Storms come all the time. Most of the time, the hurricanes, these things are called nor'easters. And what happens is they come up through the Gulf of Mexico. And what they're following, if you actually look at a satellite image, is like a bowling alley. They come right up the Ohio Valley and then spill out someplace in New England, usually. So they call them nor'easters because they come from the southwest and they're heading to the northeast. And then sometimes they make their way up the coast, and almost always they skip past New Jersey. And if you look at the map, you can kind of see why that happens. They bounce off the Carolinas and keep going. Every now and then, something takes one of those storms and bends it like you're getting your arm twisted and slams it into the coast. But most of the time it doesn't happen. And there's so many false alarms that after a while you're just like, well, I'll believe it when I see it. But, so even on the evening when they were saying, get into your houses, go home early, make sure you have, fill the bathtub with water because we don't know how that's going to be. Might not be any fresh water for weeks or days or whatever. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to believe it when I see it. But about an hour before the storm hit, something happened which I had heard. It was a sound before. The mosquito screens in the window started droning like bees. There was no wind, but the mosquito screen started humming, and it was totally creepy. But I had heard that before. In order to pay my way through university, worked on deep sea fishing boats for 6 years, basically all the way through freshman year and then into graduate school and every summer and winter and spring break and all that stuff. And there was a time when we were out on the water and the ocean was just kind of heaving itself up much more than usual. It wasn't a storm. But then the rigging of the boat, which is all metal cables, started droning like bees. And I said to one of the old timers on the boat, I said, oh, we're going to get hit. And I said, what are you talking about? It's like, it's rough, but it's no storm. And it's like, no, that's sound. And the weird thing is that it's clearly it's being made by wind, but it's wind that you can't feel. And then sure enough, an hour or two later, we literally had to rope ourselves to the boat because otherwise we'd run washed overboard. So the storm was coming at that point. And then about half an hour before it hit, do you know Ms. Green, Marisa Green?
I do, yeah. She was my teacher freshman year.
Right. We heard this knocking on the door, and she came to the door, and she had an enormous rucksack on, and her laptop, and we were like, and she just didn't want to be alone, which is totally fine, because otherwise she was by herself. She came in and spent the night in our house, but she opened up her laptop, and she was showing us a Doppler radar image of the Jersey Shore. And you could make, if you've lived here long enough, you can make out where Belmar is and Manasquan and all those things. And there was this enormous circular ball, bladed at the edges like a rotary saw blade. And it was coming right at us. And at that point, I knew that everything was about to stop. This is circling back to how this actually turned out to be a good thing for the school, so I haven't forgotten the plot. But there's a style of talking called Southern oratorical style, which means that you circle back, but you have to remember where you started. So I haven't forgotten. When it got dark, the wind started up, and about an hour in, we started hearing two things. One was this terrible, wrenching, cracking sound. And it wasn't the sound of a branch going down. That's a particular sound. This was a sound that I had not heard before. And what it was a sound of entire trees getting wrenched out of the ground. One of the things that happened is it was late in the year, maybe October, but the leaves hadn't fallen. So the trees, especially these big ones on campus, became like the sails of ships. And it carried the entire tree out of the ground. So you can still, if you drive, I don't know, you're not a day student.
I'm a boarder.
Oh yeah, but say on your way home, if you look into the forest, you can still see the remains of trees that were torn out of the ground with their entire root systems intact.
Wow.
So that there were these literally as tall as the ceiling here, so 10 feet.
Well, I think I've gone on some like trail hiking, and I've seen some of those, but I never like thought about
But
the origin.
those came from Hurricane Sandy. Those were not there before that.
I see.
And what happened was that the root systems came up with these enormous discs of soil. So they were everywhere. And when those trees came down, and they were coming down, I mean, there's a house just across the Petty Bridge, took a tree right through the middle. It was literally as if somebody karate chopped a birthday cake. That's what it looked like. And anyway, then there was another sound, which was a crackling sound. This electrical kind of splintering sound. The thing I would compare it to, I actually heard this morning. I have like a morning bicycle riding of 12 miles.
Oh, nice.
And when it's raining, and when I go under those great arrays of power lines, there's a road down here called Cedarville, and I go under this array of power cables, and in the rain, those power cables crackle. They crackle like bacon cooking. And I could hear them, but it seemed to be coming from everywhere. And I looked out, and what I saw was the sky flashing a color that I had never seen in the sky before, and it was turquoise. Like this brilliant bluish. It was beautiful.
Is this during the hurricane or
Yes,
just
it's right when it's like at the height of the hurricane. And it was beautiful, but it was also terrible because all these things were happening that were completely out of the zone of normality. And so the sky began flashing turquoise. And it literally looked like Morse code, like something, like literally some kind of a message. And I thought to myself, are they flashing some kind of warning signal to us or something? And then the turquoise went dark, the sky turned vivid, I'll explain what this was in a sec, but it turned vivid red, like cranberry juice, like a whole sky. And then all the lights went out. And what was happening, and this is in a weird way where it became both terrible and wonderful at the same time. What was happening is there's a generator station, and those generator stations have transformers. The transformers are as big as the desk that separates us now, and there are hundreds of them. Those transformers had begun arcing. If you'd been standing in that transformer field, you'd have been cooked, because they were arcing, literally lightning bolts flying from one to the other. And then the whole thing blew up.
Oh, wow.
All the transformer fields. If you had walked to the transformer field afterwards, you would literally have seen a smoldering ruin of what had once been the power source of this entire area. And it's terrible, but it was also marvelous, because all of a sudden, this interview would have been impossible. Cell phones, forget about it. Computers gone. No internet, no phone. We were literally back in the 1800s. Because here's what happened. Everybody has a flashlight. That flashlight lasts 3 hours, and then you're done. And nobody has any refrigeration. And how do you do that? The water, that didn't go off immediately, but nobody had any gasoline, because the power pumps in the gasoline are electrically powered. So it literally, everything that you normally take for granted went evaporated. Things changed by the end of the first day. We had no power, but this building had power because it
the
was
Long
hooked
Street?
up. Yes, Long
Okay.
Street. And this place actually became, for me and my family, as I have a son and a daughter, we have no refrigeration. So if we don't eat the food on that day, it's all gone. The supermarkets were closed. The school was busy, like, serving up food that had been, stuck in the freezer for forever. I don't even know how they managed it. There is, behind us, a little room, and there either is or was a little mini fridge. And I knew about that, and I knew that most people didn't know that there was a mini fridge in there. So that became our secret fridge. But also, the other thing about it, and this is kind of where it became wonderful, all of the day students were sent home, and some of them were beyond the range of destruction, so they went back to a perfectly normal life. A lot of the parents got so tired of having to deal with their kids at home that they started dropping them off on campus. So we had kids just wandering around the campus.
In the storm?
Well, after the storm.
Okay.
And so the entire Jersey Shore has been torn to shreds. There were literally houses drifting out to sea. That's how crazy it was. If you've been to Belmont, have you ever been to Belmont? Okay. The entire sort of seafront was gone, just gone. All of the houses boarded up, and they stayed that way for about a year and a half. So it lasted a really long time. But the part that was wonderful is how unimportant technology became. And this is going back to the beginning. Anybody who was here then remembers this one night when, after just a week of trying to keep the students occupied, they decided to have a talent show in the dining hall. And what was wonderful, so we had light in the dining hall. I was at that point using oil lamps. I had an oil lamp, and at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when it started to get dark, I would find myself putting things where I knew I could find them in the dark. Normally, just turn on the light, where are my keys? But over there, when it's dark, no flashlight, no candles. I had to know where stuff was as if I was blind. And the dining hall had electricity, but anybody who could do anything just came and entertained. People sang songs. The headmaster, who was not Mr. Quinn, but a previous man named Mr. Green, who was here for Founders Day. It was that guy, the tall guy with big snow.
Yeah, I remember.
Anyway, he had a play Monopoly or tic-tac-toe with the headmaster. So all these people would line up to play tic-tac-toe and see if they could beat the headman. And there was a woman who was a French teacher, and everybody remembers this. She had been a floor manager at J. Crew, Princeton, which is, I don't know if it's still there. And she taught us how to fold a sweater. And everybody thought that was hilarious. So when I look back on the years that I've been here, and I think about the illusion of dependence, and frankly, the damage caused by that illusion, I am sometimes reassured by how unimportant it can become.
If you enjoyed that clip, then click here to see the full, unedited length podcast. Make sure to click here to see the full podcast, and don't forget to like and subscribe.